I think from our standpoint at PTC, it's almost as if, let the market figure out what that line of demarcation actually is going to be. It doesn't really matter from our standpoint in terms of like a product lifecycle management capability, no matter what it is or where that line is. Yep. You can store all of that very important technical data inside a database, and oftentimes PTC is that database.
Well, that's absolutely, and I think it comes down for our customers, how can we help them be most efficient, be most cost effective, so they're winning that competition. So from our perspective, we really help with what we do best and help our customers develop capabilities faster.
Yeah, I think as our customers actually try to figure that out, they shouldn't try to go it alone, right? Like sort of like poking around in the dark, trying to figure where things are at and how do they actually define the systems, how do they define the interoperability? This is exactly where we can help, right? So that's where, us working with customers on, again, we've talked about in the past about approaching programs and working through that. This is another area I think we could actually help with. Now, they have the expertise on the systems in those different pieces, but I think when we think about managing requirements and managing tests and managing the product data, those types of things, and trying to figure out where the interoperability and where you actually maintain that traceability of that requirement down to something that could be acquired from multiple different sources, or even in some cases swapped out, right? Think about like the second phase of anything, right? A missile, for example, like phase 2, phase 3, whatever it happens to be. If you need to swap out a seeker for something new to take on a new mission, then you need to make sure you actually understand what are those interface points and have those control points well documented, well defined, with testing and test cases and test runs associated to it, to understand that as you're making that swap out, yes, it's doing what I wanted it to do. Yeah, to that end, I think that's where we can certainly help. We built a demo, with Hill helicopters. We've spoken about that in the past, and I think that's where you think around the 85% solution. How do you quickly buy down risk? You buy down risk by doing digital engineering, coupling that with simulation, and then iterating quickly in various scenarios, right? That's how you're going to iterate an 85% solution up to the whatever percent is actually needed for that particular case. And of course, we don't necessarily build factories, but we certainly have solutions that actually can bring manufacturing engineering, even service engineering or whole life engineering back closer to design engineering, so that things are actually being designed in an appropriate manner, right, to reduce manufacturing steps, to reduce manufacturing costs, right, to ensure that things when they're fielded, right, can be serviced at the speed they need to be serviced. So think about the warfighter that's out there, halfway from point A to point B is broken down, and they need to do something quickly to get repair and up and running again. You need to be thinking through what exactly is the right way to design that thing for those things in mind, the end in mind. And I think that, to me, like the fundamental change in the strategy in what's happening here with the Arsenal of Freedom kind of speech and the effective immediately comments that we got from Secretary Hegseth, those to me are the ones that are standing out like, this is the sea state change that we've been talking about and that we needed.
And to your point with, design for manufacturability, I think a lot of our customers for a long time, and they do DFMAs, design for manufacturability assessment kind of, but it's a very manual process kind of thing. And you still had the data problem of, okay, now I got to go pull data from multiple systems. So I'm excited too, because we can kind of help, do that, connect the dots to take those manual processes and put them on steroids, automate them. And help our customers do this. Because if we don't, and they don't, I think you're going to see some major changes and losing competitions, which we don't want to see in any of our customers.
I can't emphasize enough the whole bringing manufacturing engineering close to design. It's just anecdotally, right? So early in my career as a design apprentice, at a shipbuilder in Maine, was designing stuff and thought I was doing a fantastic job of designing stuff until I, had to take a rotation in manufacturing and actually install stuff. And then recognizing that putting pipe breaks, up close to a bulkhead or to the bottom of the ship, where all of a sudden now the welder actually is now needing a mirror to weld because they can't physically get the torch, or the stick under, in that location. So it's those types of insights you bring back that, like, those are the things that actually have, while seemingly very small, but over the life of a program, like the Arleigh Burke, for example, right? I started my career on that ship. It's still in production. There's still manufacturing, still designing. So that bad design that perhaps I put back in, right? They're paying for it year after year after year. So trust me, when I came out of that rotation at a completely different mindset about how to design things and thinking about, what am I doing to the person that's actually trying to install this thing. Alex, earlier you mentioned AI, and it brings me to, I think it was just this past week, seeing posters all over the Pentagon, right? So we've seen pictures of people, right, stating basically, I want you to use AI. And if we think about where that's heading and, kind of where we're heading with our products and, obviously bringing them into the tools and, assisting and automating and advising, in various manners. But if we think about, to your point, Bill, on the conversation we had with the European customer, like if you're starting anew today, do I want to build like early 2000s? Do I want to build like them in the 1990s? Or do I want to build like a frontier company, frontier firm that is actually going to leverage AI at every angle, right? And to do that, you need to actually have product data. You need to have control of that data. I think one of the things that I know that we've been working on a lot here, and hopefully that'll translate very well into our customer needs and working with our customers, is around thinking around enterprise business processes. So when we think about agentic AI and like how do you lean out something, we've seen some great demos that are fantastic, are amazing folks here in our strategy department, right? It can put together in real working live software that shows the power of agentic. And if you're thinking that way forward, the whole thing around data rights and digital data and product data and the connectivity and all the traceability, that's all fundamental to being able to execute at that level.
It's also a fundamental opportunity, I think, for the DIB itself, which is sitting on, frankly, an ocean of product data that in many cases is going to be used by the government, but I would say in most cases is underutilized by the government. So could that be a new revenue channel? Again, for things like training large language models in operational use cases. Forget about just optimizing manufacturing, which is this, a very important priority within the Ship's OS initiative and in the Navy. But I mean, once we're out there in the combatant commands, how are you actually training a large language model in part based on all of that product data? That's a massively untapped opportunity, first for the DIB, but also most importantly for the warfighter, and making sure that the outputs of that artificial intelligence are super sharp and landing in the right square of the chessboard.
I think that sometimes the hard part, and we've seen this even just in conversations, Bill, you and I have had, and we actually did a presentation this year at GPDIS, talking about traditional, at least within the companies we've worked for, when transformation dollars come about, those like engineering is allocated X number of dollars to transform engineering. You better darn well know that the outcomes of that transformation are going to benefit engineering and engineering alone. So meaning that they're unlikely to spend dollars to streamline manufacturing or supply chain. So I think, when we think about kind of the future and where the opportunities exist, and that's why we keep talking back like this concurrent engineering, is in thinking about when you're going to make investments like for AI, or you're going to be making investments for various things. Yes, it may cost you $1 more, right, or add one more click to engineering, but if it's going to save you 100-fold downstream, that's the mindset that needs to happen. And when I think through the AI pieces that we talked about, think about like new career folks, giving them the tools that they need to actually create the data in the formats with the maturity that is needed in order to actually do all the things that sort of like the promised land, if you will, once you get the data foundation.